Hello and welcome to the Love Without Limits video walkthrough of our book, The 9 Principles to Rapidly Transform Your Relationship, Love Without Limits. I'm Christine Watty and I'm here today with my longtime partner in business and life and also my best friend, Grant.
Yeah, welcome everyone. We're pretty excited that we're here with you today, and we're going to go through an exploration of the principles that have transformed thousands of relationships, including our own. So yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah, great. And you can see there our contact details are right there on this first slide. So if you do have any questions anytime as we walk through this, the book, do feel free to send us a text or an email. And the details, of course, are also in the book.
Okay, so first up, we're just starting with a vision of how you want your relationship to be. So imagine glancing across the room and catching your partner's eye. You share a micro moment, a smile spreads across their face and lights up your world. Picture waking up every morning where you're feeling deeply connected to the person cuddled beside you, loving your life together. And the best part is that this connection isn't fleeting. It's the essence of your relationship. It's something that Christine and I have every morning. We wake up, and sometimes Chris will bring me a cup of tea, and occasionally I do the same, but we'll sit outside and share a coffee in the morning, and really enjoy each other's company. So that's really what we're capturing in this first part of the book, is just getting a vision of how you want your life to be.
Thanks, Grant. And carrying on from there, what if we told you that the key to this kind of love has been within you all along? What Grant and I have done is craft an approach that can transform your relationship. We say here in just 90 days. Now, of course, that's going to vary for different couples, but it's the key thing is it's rapid. And our focus isn't just on mastering communication techniques or managing conflicts. It's about tapping into something far more powerful. And it all starts with you. So as you watch this walkthrough, you can set positive change in motion. And whether you're wanting to take a good relationship and make it great, or if you're really struggling right now and perhaps you're walking on eggshells around each other, if you're open and coachable and take consistent positive action with the principles, we promise that you will get positive outcomes from this process. And at the very least, you will find happiness and joy. And also, we hope your relationship will truly flourish.
Yeah, so our process really grew out of our $1 Million Marriage program that we launched in 2018. And this was really to help couples, especially business owners, professionals, mature couples, where one person woke up and said, I don't love you anymore, or there's been an affair. And because their partner was checked out, they really didn't know how to work it out themselves. And so then we got particularly good at helping people to rapidly transform their relationship. And we came up with a formula, but like a recipe, like baking a cake, that kind of works, not all the time, but most of the time, and was a lot more successful than the therapy that we did. Earlier on in the piece, we found some things just didn't work, and so we've created the step-by-step guide through all the 9 transformation principles. But more importantly, we're sharing these deeper insights and real examples that we just couldn't fit in the written pages. Yeah.
Yeah, and to give you a flavour of who we are and how this all came about. And so to share a little bit more around that, let's before we dive in further, we'll share a little bit about why this all matters to us personally.
Yeah, so there's you can read the story there. This we were working with kings and queens and sultans and prime ministers in Malaysia, and then we came across this conversation where a king, and he wasn't happy, and the prime minister wished he had more money and he was more successful. So we're kind of living this glamorous life, but for me, I felt like I almost lost it all, because back home we weren't getting on that well. And then we're referencing this time where we're sitting inside our Belmont Hills house in Wellington, and Chris is heartbroken in the yellow room, and I'm in the kitchen, pretty unhappy because she's unhappy, and our relationship was kind of broken and really suffering. And then we just didn't know what to do next. We just really didn't. And then
Yeah.
you had a conversation with your best friend.
Yeah, our next door neighbour, Dr. Rose, we, she said to me in this really challenging conversation, she just said, this doesn't have to be the end. And this really kept playing in my head. I thought, well, we're so far apart. How could that be the truth? How could that be true? But it just kept playing and playing in my mind. And what actually did come out of that is that this time of real crisis actually has become the gift as we've allowed it to. While at that time we were really, really struggling, um, this tiny voice inside my head was saying, you guys really had something special together. This can't be how your story ends. There has to be a better way. And that's when we really decided that we would find a better way.
Yeah. We kind of think that we had to do it the hard way, because that wake up call became the impetus for us to sell our business. And we trained in therapy and counseling and coaching and leadership, and we worked with literally thousands of couples. And over those last 20 years, we've distilled all these principles into kind of real world examples of what works and what doesn't. And so that's kind of led on to our passion. Our mission now is to help other couples who are struggling, so you don't have to do it the long way. And that's why we say it was our greatest gift, because without going through that ourselves, we wouldn't know how to help you.
Yeah, we wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
And so in the process for writing this book, Grant and I, we've had this kind of inside us for quite a number of years now. And Grant being, he's an awesome creator and a big picture guy. Early last year, what did you do?
Well, there's a little bit of a backstory to this. We trained in therapy. We've trained in the Gottman process. We've trained in Harville Hendricks, EFT, all of the therapies, and yet none of it we felt really comfortable with. Like, we didn't really use those principles in our own relationship. It was kind of like, oh yeah, it made sense in the therapy room, but then we just wouldn't talk like that with each other. And what I found was, when I was doing EAP sessions, like a couple would get 3 sessions through their company, and then they come and see me, and it's like, we want to transform our marriage, but we've only got 3 sessions. And so then I developed this, or we kind of would, in conversation, we developed this process that would actually, a lot of couples would see this kind of rapid transformation and get incredible results really, really fast. It would normally take a year of therapy. So I thought about this and thought, we've actually got something quite special here that is really unique. So I went for a walk one day and thought, I'm just going to record it all on my phone, actually, and record everything that I would say to a couple, and these principles that they can then apply to their life. And so I recorded it all, after 2 or 3 days, and then transcribed it, and that became the basis of the book. Of course, Christine, she's amazing at leadership development and creating content and leadership programs, adult education. So she took it and crafted it, and together we've created this, which we think is a really powerful approach.
Yeah, so the whole way through, we were in tandem with each other to create.
Just using our strengths, and
Yeah.
it's a big part of what we talk about in the book as well.
Yeah, thanks. That's awesome. So look, we've at this point, we've shared our story. So now let's get to your story and why you're here on this video walkthrough today. And there's research that's referenced on page 4 that shows that 60% of people in relationships say they're unhappy, that around 50% of first marriages end in divorce. And for second marriages, it's even higher, approximately 60 to 67% ending in divorce. And only 39% of couples report being very happy in their relationships.
Yeah, so often I'll say to a couple, look, if when they're saying, "Shall we stay together?" I say, well, the thing is, if you can't make it work in this relationship, there's a good chance that you'll go into another relationship with the same stuff. And sometimes I'll see people after their second or third divorce, and they've got the same issues coming up. So it really does pay to try and at least try and sort it out, or give it your best shot at sorting out your communication issues and all the issues that we talk about in the book, to learn this stuff, even where you're at, and then at least you're not repeating the same stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And following along from the quote that I was sharing earlier, just because being unhappy is common doesn't mean it's inevitable or needs to be permanent. And that really is, as Grant said, that's the purpose of the book. It's like to transform relationships. It certainly transformed ours and the couples that we work with, and we certainly hope it will do that for you too. Creating partnerships where both of you feel satisfied and report feeling very happy. And that's really what life's all about, isn't it? Well, from our perspective. So if that's what you're wanting, then you're in the exact right place. So that takes us along to the Araha Rapid Transformation Model, which is at the heart of the model that we work with in the 9 principles. You can see there that it's built on 3 pillars: lead, love, and live. And the 9 principles that we work through in the book are all around the edge there. They tap into the 3 pillars, and at the centre there, that's what we're creating. We're creating really your love without limits relationship. And we do like to think of it a bit like a recipe for making a cake. You put all of these different principles in together in the right order and with the right with a little bit of direction and expertise, and that's what you're creating.
Well, the thing is, like a cake, if you put the icing on at the end, it just won't work. So we think sex and intimacy. People say, well, how do I create more intimacy? How do we get closer? Well, that comes with trust. Well, how do you create trust? Well, that comes with integrity, where you both can trust each other. You do what you say you'll do. And how do you create more trust? Well, you've got to stop the conflict and get expectations and agreements. So the foundation of the cake, the eggs and the flour and the sugar and they're all important parts of the cake. But then you can kind of spice it up a bit and put the icing on in the end, and you've got to bake it. But everything has its place, and it's got to be done in the right order. And that's where traditional therapy often just doesn't work, because you go straight into trying to fix the problems in the past when actually the foundations aren't even there. So that's where this model is really important, because it'll take you through all the foundations you need, all the principles you need to create an amazing relationship together.
Yeah, and look, this model is quite unique in a few ways, 3 key ways actually. So we focus on who you're being in your relationship, not just what you're doing. So that's point number 1. Then we integrate leadership principles. So this really is a leadership model, and it empowers you to lead fast, action-focused, positive change. And lastly, of the 3 principles, of the 3 key unique factors of the model, is we guide you to creating a shared vision focused on the way forward, not on all the problems of the past.
Yeah, so we're going to break down each principle with real examples, some specific actions, and these demonstrations will make all the difference in applying the principles successfully in your own relationship. We're going to talk about how to get the most from this book, and it's just not meant to just be read. It's meant to be lived. So each chapter contains practical exercises that you can go and put into practice in the real world in your relationship, to apply these principles. And by the time you finish it, you'll really have your own roadmap for transforming your relationship. It might be worth mentioning as well, if you want to move a lot faster, well, feel free to reach out, send us an email. If you've got specific questions or things that you need to kind of work on right now. Some couples come to us and say, well, look, my wife is leaving me. What do I do? I haven't got time to read a whole book. I really need your help. So feel free to reach out to us, and you'll see the email details there.
Yeah, thanks, Grant.
And we'll talk a bit about how you can do that at the end of this session. But this is really about giving you a flavour of a walkthrough of all of the principles, just from the perspective of Christine and I, and how this all came about.
Yeah, and of course we bring our unique experience and Kiwi perspective to this global issue, and we do that throughout the book. And just we haven't
kind of no BS really. I come from a farm and being brought up on the land, and you just don't entertain kind of some of these rubbishy approaches from theory or research that really just don't make any sense or don't work. And Christine, was brought up by accountants in Wellington, and our differences in styles work beautifully together because we can kind of synthesize the BS and the practicality and my kind of left field ideas into something solid that actually does work.
Yeah, and what we do really both wholeheartedly agree with is that these 9 principles that we've really distilled and looked at and examined, they really are universal. So that's the thing. Just like gravity, if you drop an apple, it's going to fall. It's like these principles actually just work across cultures, relationship stages, different ages. They just are. So
yeah, well, we work with everyone from a king and a queen right through to couples out of prison, and everyone in between. So we're not saying it just works for a select group of people. We have been in business ourselves, and run international businesses and kind of software companies, and done a whole lot of stuff and been in corporate. So we've got to kind of bring that to it, but also just the understanding of working with different cultures, and Māori, Pacific, Asian cultures. We work closely with Latin America. A good friend was the Chilean ambassador, so we got to spend a lot of time with their families.
Right.
Yeah.
Closer than a brother. Yeah. So let's just flowing along with the book. Then at the end of every chapter, you'll find that we share action, because we, as Grant said, we're no fluff. It's not all theory. This is practical action. And so at the end of the introduction, we invite you to look at your first step, what you're going to do. So every chapter will add another piece of the puzzle, if you like, to transforming your relationship, or another ingredient in the cake baking. So we get straight into your vivid vision and your ideal future in the introduction. Before we even get into the chapters, we ask you, what is your first step from where you are right now to what you're wanting to create? And, because of course, if you don't take any action, if nothing changes, then nothing changes. Einstein.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's hard to take action if you don't have a vision of how you want things to be, because this whole idea of creating a future is really important, because for most couples, you look at the current island you're on, and it's a bit like Hell Island. It's just not working. Everything you look at seems a problem, and you feel really demotivated, frustrated, and stuck. And so by creating a future that might seem impossible, but it's really important that you take your eyes off where you are now and then really focus on how you want things to be, what it looks like, sounds like, smells like, feels like. What are you doing differently? What have you stopped doing back there, and what have you started doing over here? And at least get a sense of it,
Yeah.
because that's the first step, and then we'll go into the first step of taking 100% responsibility. And I might be jumping ahead, but that is the key to get crystal clear clarity and get the insight and the motivation to create something different,
Yeah.
rather than looking at the problems in the past, because you can't fix. I don't want version 1 of my relationship. We're on version 3 probably, or 4. We keep on evolving and creating something better.
Yeah, yeah, and just as we conclude this piece on the introduction, as we go through this video walkthrough, do feel free to pause the video, to take out your book, turn to the page in the book, and actually work through the exercise, because of course all the details are in this book as we go. And really, to get the best results from this process, whether you're reading the book, whether you're on the walkthrough, they all work together. Take the time, give yourself the gift of time to read the book, to listen to this walkthrough, to reflect and to create your actions. Because as Lao Tzu says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So what is your first step? And that takes us to our very first principle. In fact, you've already given us a little lead into that earlier, taking 100% responsibility.
Yeah, so in the realm of relationships, taking 100% responsibility means recognizing that you are the creator of your experience. A victim will think everything else is the cause and I'm the effect. If you take the position, and it doesn't mean to say that people have difficult situations, but at least if you take this as a position that you are that you are the creator of your experience, then you're empowered to make the shifts. So in other words, I'm responsible for all of my thoughts, all of my emotions, and how I show up in my relationship. Like an All Black. If I want to play a better game of rugby, I've got to take 100% responsibility. Whether you play rugby or whether you play squash or whether you play netball, then that empowers you to make the changes that you want to make.
Yeah, and another way that we frame that, you can see there a couple of basketball players there on the slide. Are you a player or a spectator? So we can this occurs in our life and in our relationship. The spectator is just sitting on the sidelines watching. They have no power to influence the game really in any significant way. Yeah, sure, they can be shouting and cheering them on, but actually it's the players who have the ability to change the outcome of the game. And that's in relationships. Taking 100% responsibility really is about choosing to be that person, that player in action on the court, working towards the very best outcomes that are possible. So let's have a look at in the book. Then we look at a model that we call above the line thinking. This is a great visual tool that actually shows you how you can take 100% responsibility to be the player. And the key word here is choosing. So you can see there the line, the choice line. All of us can at times get below that line, operating from the place of blaming, making excuses, getting defensive, and as Grant said earlier, this is like being the victim. I'm powerless to impact. Or we can make the choice, yes, we feel those feelings, and actually to turn something around and actually choose, regardless, I'm going to take 100% responsibility and create an action from this place, so that I can instead of operating from those negative emotions, we've just captured them in one word, their fear. We can actually be coming from those those positive emotions, which again, you could call it courage, you could call it what we call it there, love. A whole different world that you're coming from, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting because this model is used a lot in corporate with teams, to encourage teams to agree that, okay, we're going to operate above the line and then call each other out when we're operating below the line. And once you have this distinction, you've then got a choice. Well, I can either take responsibility and be the type of person that operates above the line. I can be more powerful, more loving, more responsive, more appreciative, more grateful. All of those positive things are all above the line. Or there's a side of me that can slip into not the best of me, and we talk about that later on, where I can start to blame. Oh yeah, but you always, you're criticizing me. You're not so great yourself. I can make excuses. Yeah, but I was late. I can be defensive. Why aren't you listening to me? I can get into that mindset. So they're both me. I can have above the line thinking and I can have below the line thinking. The choice is mine to make. And so then we bring in the stop tool, which is about stopping when you are in below the line, and just literally stopping like a traffic light. You've gone from green to orange to red, and when you're in orange, that's the time to stop. Just like if you're in a car, if you go through an orange light, it's not going to be so great.
Yeah. So if you remember just one tool from this whole video walkthrough, we would say this one is an awesome one to remember. All of them are great, but this is just so simple to actually stop. When you're triggered, so you notice. What we do is we encourage you to notice the sensation when you move from that calm place into that orange space, and actually to notice it. And when you move out of green to amber, catch it quickly before things escalate out of control, because in the red space, that's when you really damage relationships. So, how do you do this in a relationship? We talk you right through this in the book, but in a short form, you agree together on a simple word that when one or other of you is triggered, because this is awareness as a couple as well, is you just use a word. And granted, I just use the word stop. Other couples have used words like bananas or grass, words that work for them. But we just use stop, don't we?
Yeah, stop or pause or okay, we need to walk away.
Yeah. And that's that is the key, is like when you stop, then both people need to realize actually that is a call for walking away, giving yourself a space. It doesn't need to be a long space, but just enough, because the old thing of counting to 10 when you're angry actually does work. That anger comes from that high level down quite quickly. So really it's stop, walk away, and then proceed with kindness and compassion, isn't it?
Yeah. Now that we talk about the tiger turtle later on, but it's really important to understand that couples just get into this pattern and are working with thousands and thousands of couples. Just about every single couple, the whole issue in the relationship is not the issue. It's not the towel on the floor. It's how you argue about the towel on the floor. Because one person becomes more like the tiger and criticizes and blames or gets frustrated, but then the other one becomes more like the turtle and goes into their shell. But essentially, both of you are in orange, right? You're no longer in green. You're no longer operating above the line. So that's why stop is so important, because when you stop the damage you're doing to the relationship, then you're already shifting the relationship bank account. So there's only positive things happening and not negatives. So that's why this is really critical. And I found that when couples implemented the stop technique and made it absolute, something that they both agreed to do and always did, then all of a sudden the conflict was gone, and love just flowed a lot more naturally.
Yeah, and what I can hear, and this is really just a interesting observation as we're talking, is as we're integrating already the other principles that are coming ahead. Grant's already talked about the tiger turtle
Yeah.
and the relationship bank account and others that are coming, because all of them work together. Okay, and at this point in and this tool in itself can be used on different layers as well. So, if we're talking about the 100% responsibility, you can use it even for just your own self. So the number of people that I work with who, especially people who are really stretched to the limit, they need to apply this to themselves. Maybe they're burnt out, maybe they're constantly in orange and red. Well, how is a relationship going to flourish when one partner is in that place? So it's a great tool between the couple. It's also a great tool for yourself as an individual in the couple. So, and most of these tools have several different ways to be applied. Okay, so at the end of this chapter, we say, well, what's your action for taking 100% responsibility? Well, we would just say, try the stop tool. So next time that you're upset or you're both upset, stop, breathe, take 3 deep breaths, walk away, take time out. And when you're calm, focus on repair, with a soft tone. Let your partner know that you want to make this work. Then ask them what they need and listen.
Yeah. Yeah, so that really just takes us to the end of chapter 1, taking 100% responsibility for your part in life and relationship. And one way you can put this into practice is with chapter 2 principle, building your relationship bank account, taking responsibility to create more positives in your relationship and stop the below the line activities, the negatives. It's pretty simple, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you do that, job done.
Great. And look, relationship bank account, there is a magic ratio of the number of positive interactions to every one negative interaction that happy couples experience. So if you've read the book, you'll already know that. If you haven't read the book, just think, how many positives to every negative do you need? And look, according to the Gottman research, happy couples make an average of 20 positive interactions to every negative one. And even during conflict, happy couples have 5 or more positive interactions for every one negative reaction. So that's 5 to 1 is what we would call the magic ratio. And look, this principle really focuses on how you can build those positive interactions into your relationship bank account. And the relationship bank account really works just the same as a regular bank account. When you make plenty of deposits, that's good and healthy. On the other hand, when you keep making withdrawals, it goes into overdraft. And you make the deposits through positive actions such as kindness, honesty, keeping your word, and the likes. So,
Yeah, I mean, we intentionally have decided that we want to stop all the negative. So initially we want to be in the positive all the time. So for me, taking 100% responsibility is about me committing to doing the things that Chris loves. I'll make her a coffee in the morning. Chris would leave notes of appreciation. And for us, another thing that became really important, especially when the kids were young, Chris would have a note on the fridge, only say kind words, not harmful words, so, the kind that build up and do good to those that hear them. It's something that came out of the Bible somewhere, isn't it?
Ephesians 4, I think it's 29.
Yeah, but it's just, again, it's all about focusing on the positive and just eliminating the negative, and then it's really, really easy.
Yeah, and the great thing about that, for any of you who have children in your home, as you start to do this, you become role models for the kids. And that's something, each of our kids really has, it's rippled out into them that, we don't use harmful words. We only use the kind words, the ones that build up. And that's kind of like the flavour of our relationship, if you like.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with this is like, who's counting? You know, you don't go through your day and say, okay, well, you know, I've done my 20, or well, you know, or we're fighting, we've done 5. I mean, this is all research, but it's just a useful principle. And for me, the principle is very broad. It's just, you know, is just stopping the negative and really committing to just you know, what you say is just so important. The words that come out of your mouth, and if you keep those positive, well, it's like a garden. You're sowing, you know, you reap what you sow.
Mm.
And who doesn't want to live in that kind of environment? You know, you work in a workplace where, you know, your boss appreciates you and says, oh, thank you. And you know, my brother just got a new job, and he said, you know, it was so nice. My boss, you know, really appreciated me for what I'd done, and he was just so happy that the money wasn't important at all. It's just the fact that, you know, people actually appreciate you.
Yeah, and at the same time, Grant, you know, even though this is not, we're not counting, you know, if your relationship is really has really gone into overdraft, you know, that's an intentional change that we're encouraging you to think about. And so you might be thinking, well, how do I tip the scales in a positive direction? So it's actually noticing the good things your partner does. It's actually looking out for the good things and aiming for some. We've got here 3 specific appreciations. You can give them all at once if you want, you know, things that you're noticing that you appreciate about your partner, like we've got here taking the dog for a walk, or you know, that
Yeah.
yeah, great. And look, and
Yeah,
as
I'm
Grant,
just looking at the time. Like, we're 36 minutes into this, and we're in 2 principles, so
so we need to move a bit
we might
faster.
be here for another
Okay,
3 or 4 hours.
right, I'll take your lead here, Grant. So at the end of principle 2, we have an action, just like with every chapter of the book. So what do you do to build your relationship bank account? Make a list of 10 kind things you could do for your partner this week. And bonus, if they're the kinds of things that your partner would really make them feel loved. Schedule at least one a day. If your partner annoys you, stop, use the stop tool, find one positive thing about the situation too, say the positive thing out loud, and thirdly, suggest a relationship bank account chat with your partner. Share some recent times that have made you feel special, and one example of how they could show up for you more and really listen to their side of the story. So,
Yeah.
did you want to add anything there, or do we want to?
Well, it just kind of brings us to the next point.
The next principle?
Yeah, the next principle, which is the tiger turtle pattern. You know, as I said before, this really is. It just seems so obvious, and other models talk about it, and really briefly, you know, talk about this kind of attack pursue cycle that occurs in patterns in couples. Um, for me, in working with couples to get some sort of rapid transformation, this has been one of the most transformative principles in terms of understanding, because when you see that this pattern occurs, you know, we can show you how to stop it, and when you stop it, everything changes, because then you're just back to getting along like when you first met. You know, you just got along. You didn't see the tiger and the turtle. You know, the tiger attacks, and then the turtle withdraws, and then both partners feel disconnected. You know, it's kind of like the tiger. They talk about the 4 horsemen of the, you know, which are the 4 indicators that relationships are in trouble. The first is criticism and contempt. You know, criticism and blame, which is kind of a bit like the tiger. You know, they come forward. They tend to be more, or perceived at least, as being critical. And you're criticizing me. You're blaming me, says the turtle. But then they go into their shell, and then the tiger says, yeah, but you're being defensive. You're withdrawing. You know, and then the more the tiger pursues, the more the turtle withdraws, and you know, I can imagine you can identify with that. Occasionally you get two turtles, which is like you don't even talk about anything, and in some
Or two
ways,
tigers.
or two tigers, and they tend to separate really quickly because the conflict just becomes too much. But for most often, and we're talking about in conflict, it's one person's going forward to resolve it, the other person's withdrawing. But the issue is not whether you're a tiger or a turtle, is that, talking about the traffic light, you've gone from green to orange to red, and nothing good is coming out of it.
And as we say there on the slide, it's this cycle can go on for years. And we've worked with lots of couples who, because they're not aware of it, they're stuck in this pattern for decades. So really the first thing to be thinking about with the tiger and the turtle pattern is, am I being a tiger or am I being more like the turtle? So that awareness of how you're showing up. And of course, we're not always one or the other. We have more of a tendency towards one or the other.
Yeah, like I can definitely get defensive and go into my shell, but I can also come out snapping, a bit more like a tiger. Um, the issue is not so much whether you label me a tiger or turtle or Christine. The issue is that you're not being your best self. You're not being above the line now. You're kind of being below the line.
Yeah, and if you're not aware of it, you're stuck in it for decades.
Yeah, well, it's all Chris's fault. If only you would listen to me. If only you would. You don't understand me, and you always say that, and you always do that to me, and if only you would stop, then I wouldn't get so defensive. I wouldn't get so angry.
Yeah, and so now hopefully you've identified whether you're more the tiger or a turtle. And now that you've identified that natural preference, we're going to introduce you to the giraffe solution. And did you know that the giraffe is the land animal with the biggest heart? So this is quite a nice little visual graph, showing the different ways that we can approach conflict. And you can see there the tiger up there, it's my way or the highway. And that works really well. Well, we get it was a very typical relationship that used to happen in leadership. There was a tiger, my way or the highway, and the turtle says, well, you say jump, how high? But actually in the long term that isn't really a great solution, because the turtle tends to get burnt out, and it's not actually workable. It's certainly not workable in the world that we live in today with so much change. And sometimes it's called the VUCA environment: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And it definitely doesn't. It's definitely not a recipe for relationships to flourish. All the research that's out there suggests that in a situation where you want to maintain relationships, then the preferred approach is the collaborative, big-hearted giraffe approach. So when you're thinking about this, if you've identified yourself as the tiger, what is it that you need to dial up to be more like a giraffe? Well, obviously it's being more focused on the other person's interests. And if you're the turtle there, you need to dial up your assertiveness to be more big-hearted like the giraffe. So it all kind of makes sense. It's all simple. That's our approach is the KISS approach. Keep it short and simple. It doesn't mean easy, for the tiger to bring in their claws, or to the turtle who's had years of this experience to let to come out of their shell. It can be challenging.
Yeah, I mean, if I boil it down into how I think about this kind of conflict styles, it's like really, really simple. You, you need the tiger to take their claws in, right? And you need the turtle to come out of their shell, because you still have to come together. You still have to cooperate. You still have to work together to communicate and get a resolution, because you've got these differences in opinion, differences in expectations, differences in things you need. So that the turtle's not coming out of their shell; they're in their man cave, or but they've got to come out of their shell and be willing to talk and then the tiger's got to allow them the space to be able to do that without, oh, you got all defensive and you ran away, and why do you keep on doing that? Soften their approach.
Yeah, and really at its heart, when two or more people come together, conflict is going to happen. But as Max Lucado is quoted as saying there, conflict is inevitable because we will have the different perspectives. But how we approach it, if we approach it from a combative, oppositional approach, that is optional. So we're saying, no, let's not do that. Let's approach it from a collaborative perspective. And how we do this? First of all, we use the stop tool that we've already discussed in one of the earlier principles, and then we come together with what a tool, clear requests and agreements.
Yeah. So how I'd like to talk about this is that almost everyone is kind of lives on their own planet with differences. You just kind of live in your own world. I think John Gray said men are from Mars, women from Venus. My view is that we're all on our own planet. We all have our own differences and expectations, values, beliefs, differences in the way we were brought up, and you just see the world differently. So that getting clear requests and agreements is about going from expectations to agreements, and then you're on the same page by making requests. So did you want to talk a bit more about how to do that?
Yeah, well, just quickly, because I think that, pausing the video and reading the book or just, looking at this slide is pretty clear on there. But really, the first step, when you notice conflict is to apply the stop tool. So notice that you're triggered and actually take responsibility, 100% responsibility for yourself to calm down and to wait till your partners calm down as well. And then to come together, because if we don't come together, we can't resolve any conflict, And, what we resist persists. So you keep that conflict there. It's going to bubble out at some point in some way, probably when you don't expect it. And it can be just the last straw that comes out. So when you've applied the stop, you're both calm, you agree together to come together and to discuss this. And the simple 3 steps that we've got there on the slide, and this is the outcome I want. So I've got it written there super clearly, but we wouldn't use this exact language. This is the outcome of Z I want to achieve. I request that you do X by Y. So I pick up your, what would it be? For us. And do you commit to this?
Yeah, I mean, you don't say do you commit to this, but the idea is that when you make a request, your partner's going to say yes or no.
Yes.
So there is a commitment to this. So
Yes.
so for example, let's say I'm really frustrated because we're not spending enough time together when the kids are younger, and it's starting to come out in my behaviour, and so let's say I stop and I walk away and I go, what do I really need? What's my expectation? Well, my expectation is that we go out and spend some time together at least once a week. So then what I would do is come forward. So instead of being resentful and frustrated, I let all that go. So now I'm taking responsibility. I'm coming forward and I'm saying to Chris, "Hey, Chris, can I make a request?" And
Sure.
you'd say, should say yes or no.
Absolutely.
So the first part is I have to ask, can I make a request? That's an important part because that signals to her that we're using this tool, right?
Yeah, because especially in the early days when I'm busy with the kids or doing other things, I'm not focused.
So can I make a request?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, just a small thing, honey. Can we agree that every Friday night or one night a week is going to be our date night? And what I'll do is I'll organise a babysitter, and then at 5:30 when the kids are fed, or 6 o'clock when the kids are fed and bathed and sorted, the babysitter will come and we'll go out.
Yeah, and there's 3 ways that I can respond.
And so what do you say?
Yeah, well, I will say yes. Okay, but you can see there's actually 3 possible responses, because this is a request, it's not a demand. Okay, so Grant isn't demanding it. That's a completely different. If he was, he would be absolutely the tiger. This is actually from the giraffe. It's a request, and of course with that tone and framing, I will say yes, because that's what we both want, is to spend some more time together. However, recognise that there are two other options, a yes or a no, and also an alternative there in the third point. So
Yeah, so Chris might have said, well, yeah, but how's that going to work? So we might have to work out some details like, yeah, but you never, or then she's getting into blame, but it's kind of like, okay, well, who's going to organise the babysitter? Who's going to organise where we go? And because I'm busy with the kids, and I'll say, okay, well, I'll do that. I'll get the babysitter, and I'll organise where we go.
yeah, and I'll organise to make sure the kids have had their dinner before we go, so it all works. So
And you'll be ready on time.
Yeah, so we negotiate how that will work. So that's just a clear request. There's plenty of examples in the book as well if you want a bit more on this, because this actually, again, this is a leadership tool. Fred Kofman, Kofman, talks a lot about that. You can Google him. There's some really great, when you get this, communication can just transform in your relationship. So lastly, in this principle about the tiger and turtle, your action is to be aware of the tiger turtle interaction and choose the giraffe. So reflect on the roles and the impact. Choose one area you'd like to change and create a request. Think about 3 possible solutions and make the time to have that conversation, because you can hear that timing is important. And be sure to practice all the tools we've covered so far using stop. It's a key tool in conflict, and looking for collaborative, wholehearted giraffe solutions.
Yes. So by now you've agreed on a stop word. You've agreed to stop. By now you've agreed to go from expectations to agreements by making requests, and you've agreed that that's going to be a tool. And so then now we can talk about integrity, which really is the foundation when we talk about the cake. Integrity is the foundation to making your relationship work and your whole life work, actually.
Yeah. And so we've got there on the slide that in over 40 years together now, I think it's 44, isn't it? We've really found that this is the foundation of trusting, workable relationships. And the thing is, we don't describe integrity from a moral definition. We use the Latin word integer, the root word integer, which describes a number that's whole, one thing, not divided into fractions. And so then integrity is being whole and complete. And in plain language, a person has integrity when their word is whole and complete, basically when they honour their word. And we've got there a bicycle wheel. The wheel has integrity. It's whole and complete when all the spokes are in place. If you take out one of those spokes, it loses integrity. It doesn't work well. Put the spoke back, it has integrity again. So that's really integrity in its simplest form.
Yes. So why this is important is because, like, when you get this wrong, you have differences in expectations of each other. So expectations are like a window. The window is broken and it just doesn't work anymore. So when you have differences in expectations, like you should do this, no, but you should do that, that's expectations. It's broken integrity. And so, like a window, you fix it, right? So when you go from expectations to agreements, then you're on the same page and you have integrity. I don't have integrity if I expect something of Christine and I haven't made a request. Like, I expect you to spend more time with me. If I haven't requested that, or if I haven't created that in our relationship and got that agreement in a way that works, um, then that's on me. And that's why it's so powerful, because you can clean up your whole life this way.
Yeah, and looking at this slide, when we prioritize integrity, when we consistently honor our word, and we have agreements, as Grant said, and we align our actions with our values, so the things that matter to us, this creates the foundation of trust and reliability. So we know that we can count on each other because we're clear on our values, which we'll get to later in this in this another principle down the track. So, we really have found that this is really at the heart of trusting, satisfying, long-lasting partnerships. And in simple terms, integrity is just doing what we say we'll do. We're in integrity when our word is whole and complete, when we honour our word. And we can do this in two ways. We keep our word or keep our agreements on time and as promised. And as soon as we know that we won't be able to do that, we let our partner know and clean up any mess that's caused. And when we do this, we're still we're honouring our word despite having not kept it and maintained our agreements. So this might sound a convoluted way of saying it, but it really is quite crucial to get this. So, for example, if I say to Grant, I'm going to be home at 6 tonight.
No. Often I would say that. When the kids were younger, I would say, look, I'm going to be home at, what time will you be home, honey? And I'd say, look, I'll be home around 6 or 6:30. And then I wouldn't get home till 7:30 or 8 o'clock. And I think it's okay because, something came up at work and I've got a meeting with the boss or with a client, but I haven't let Chris know. So how did that impact you?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Like, you get it. I understand he's working hard. And it just kind of slowly eats away at that trust that we have because I can't count on Grant's word. So, when we got this principle, when, I know now that when Grant says, well, when, nowadays,
So now what would I do?
yeah, nowadays it's, well, we have cell phones, so that's one thing that is quite helpful. But, if he's at squash and he usually comes home at 6, but this time something else is happening, he'll send me a quick text and say, well, look, should I pick up a takeaway on the way home? So that in that instance, he was going to cook dinner, he's running late, he's offered to make up for the mess. So these sorts of things really do make a massive impact on relationships. And look, just keeping this practical, think about your integrity. Most people say, yep, I have integrity because they think it's a moral thing. Give yourself a number, 1 where it's broken, 10 where it's awesome. And, this is really the access to changing things, is to be super honest with yourself. And at the end of the chapter, we get you to do an integrity audit. So there's a whole pile of questions in the book. So if you've got the book handy, we suggest that you go through those questions and really reflect on the places that you're out of integrity, and then choose an action that would improve your integrity score. Because a colleague of mine, when I was working in Melbourne, said, look, integrity is a bit like being pregnant. You either are or you aren't. Because we think about it, you're either honouring your word or you're not honouring your word. And so, think it, with your relationship, this really is we can't emphasize enough how important this is.
Yeah, in practical terms, it actually means you've got to be super honest about what you say yes to. Because if I say yes, I'm going to mow the lawns today, and I'm not going to, well, then I just say no, and that's fine. No, I won't mow the lawns today. I will mow them this week, and I commit to mowing them by Saturday because I know your parents are coming on Sunday. So yes, I will have them done by Sunday.
So then, even if it's raining or you're out there in the dark.
Yeah, so that gives me the flexibility I need, but
You're committed.
I've said yes to it. Now, it also means if it's something that I can't do or I choose not to do, then I've got to say no. So I'm going to want to say yes to build the relationship bank account right. And it's all, especially at work, I find couples, people are burnt out at work, burnt out because work is stressful, home stressful. None of those things are stressful. The stress is created because you've said yes to things that you really mean no to, and you're pretending that you've got to do everything when you can only do a small amount. So part of it is taking stock of what you say yes to, what you agree to within yourself. That you have agreements with yourself. You don't just have expectations.
Yeah.
Because there's only so much and there's only one thing you can do in each moment.
Yeah, and you can use the stop tool to help you with that too, because if you're constantly on orange, then that's a signal that something's out of balance for you. So now that we've talked through integrity, and you know how to nurture integrity in your relationship, and that this is a great foundation for our very next chapter, which is growing together as our best us. So do you know that the fastest way to change your relationship isn't to try and fix your partner? It's to actually to become the best version of you. And for most people, this is really a paradigm shift. They want to fix the other person. And so in this chapter of the book, we explore how you can show up as your best me, and that can be the catalyst to transform not only your marriage, but all your relationships. This is a big promise, and one that we've seen for ourselves many times with our clients. So
yeah, it's interesting because when couples get really stuck, and they're stuck in this conflict of yeah, but you do this, yeah, but you do this, and they're really stuck. The 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 the, the paradigm shifting paradigm is when you say, well, how did I create a relationship where my wife could have an affair? How did I create this relationship where there's just not a lot of love and we're always fighting all the time? So I take it off Christine, or you take it off your partner or off life, and put it back on you and say, well, yeah, it's because I'm not being the best of me, not to judge the part of you that's not the best of you, but just to focus on being the best of you. Because when you show up, just like a sports person, you're responsible for how you perform on the field. If you're an All Black, you have to show. You can't just play club rugby. You've got to be committed, and you turn up and you show up as being the best version of you. You're not reacting. You're just creating and being the best player that you can to play the game. That's kind of the lens we're looking at it through. And there's tools and practices and approaches to doing this, and that's what this is all about.
Yeah, and we get access to the best me, which is the starting point of creating best us, because 2 times best me equals best us. That's our mathematical formula. So the access to that is actually starting to become aware of the roles that we're playing in life, because for most of us, the roles that we're playing, they're just completely, we're not aware of them, and we're just on autopilot, like we're busy doing stuff, up to big stuff. So as you become aware of the roles that you're playing and asking yourself, is this role serving me in my relationship in life? Then you start to get access to, well, how can I do this different? And so let's have a look at the practical tool that we use in this chapter, which is the This Is Me exercise. And again, all of this is detailed in the book on pages 72 and 73. And this is a visual activity. So some people like to use Playmobil figures. In fact, this is how we like to do it when we're working with people in the space. You can draw pictures, okay, as well, simple pictures to look at how you're interacting.
I can't draw very well. Do little stick figures. That's fine.
That's absolutely fine. Just be creative, because this is the visual impact of this tool is super powerful, and especially popping it up there on the fridge and looking at how you're being.
Yeah, and what we mean by this being is and being the best of you is I can show up as not the best of me, and which is an emotion and an action. So I can show up as the grumpy with the frustrated withdrawer is an old role that I play, and that's not great. It doesn't produce a lot of love and a lot of intimacy in the relationship, because I'm grumpy and I'm just withdrawing, going into my cave. But I can also show up as the best of me, which is the creative, supportive, loving husband, right? Loving supporter, where I'm supporting Chris, and I'm loving. That is the best of me. So it's an emotion and it's an action.
And of course, when Grant is, if we go to the not best me, which is, we want you to think of an exact situation where you and your partner are not, things aren't going well. Then when Grant's the grumpy withdrawer, what do? if I'm being the tiger in this instance, I'll become the frustrated criticizer.
Yeah. And the more Chris does that, the more I withdraw.
And we start to create this vicious tiger turtle tango. So we're coming back to the earlier principles. However, when we catch that and we notice that, then we can do it differently. And this is this awareness of another situation where we're being the best me. Of course, when Grant's the loving supporter, as he shared earlier, then I also, that's like it positively ripples the relationship flow. He's the loving supporter, then I'll become the loving creator. So it works together. And so this is what we want to be more aware of. And you can see there's a percentage on the screen there. When couples come to us, many of them, it's like, how much time do you spend in not best me? It's like 90-10 or 95-5, and so the small shift of, hey, I'm going to show up as my best self is a massive lever for relationship change.
Yeah, and so often couples get into but she's always criticised. How can I? And then you kind of slip into below the line victim mentality because you're not taking responsibility. Like you don't blame if you're an All Black, you don't blame someone else because you missed the pass or because they're not playing well. You've got to show up as your best self.
Yeah, and once you've created this, we get you to put this visual reminder of your best me up somewhere where you're going to see it often. So some people have it as a screensaver on their phone or on their fridge, because this is about developing the neural pathways to help you to create and to choose the best me more of the time. And we can't move past this. Well, I don't want to move past this without acknowledging one of our great mentors, Dr. Carlos Raimondo, who actually created this tool. And
his process, the play of life.
Yeah. And really, there's a quote that says, where God said to Moses, "You can choose life or death. Choose life." And really, this is what this tool is all about. When you're choosing life, you're choosing the best me. And when you're not choosing life, you're showing up as the not best me. So it's really, really a powerful visual reminder.
So it's interesting if you've seen that program on Netflix called The Tools. The psychiatrist in New York, Phil Stutz, and he talks about he talks about the best me as being the life force. When you're in the flow, when you feel that kind of life force within you, and then the not the best me is Mr. X. It's that part of your personality where you're criticizing, you're blaming, you're getting hard on yourself. Oh yeah, but I'm useless. I get angry. I'm a bad husband, a bad father. I'm lucky that she even puts up with me, and and then you get that's kind of not the best me. But it's interesting because this is kind of talked about in different ways.
Yeah, for sure. And a point that we just want to make at this stage is, while being the best me won't necessarily save your relationship, it will inevitably lead to more positive outcomes. When we work with couples, their goal is seldom or never to put up with good enough, or just to preserve the peace when things aren't going well. Most couples want to feel happy and satisfied and experience a great relationship together. The truth is, by taking responsibility to be your best me, you step into creating loving solutions that will benefit both of you. This might mean staying together and creating a loving, intimate relationship, or in some situations, it's agreeing to separate and pursue happiness elsewhere. And remember, if you have children together, then it's so much better for the kids if you can communicate and be amicable together as their role models. So choosing the best me is life-giving, is a life-giving choice. And at the end of this chapter, we're saying, well, here's your action. Complete this best me visual activity in the chapter of the book if you haven't already. Identify your best me and not best me roles, and put a photo or a visual reminder somewhere that you'll see them often to help remind you to choose best me more of the time.
Great.
Great. So that takes us now to principle 6.
Creating a shared vision. So we talked a little bit about creating your own personal vision of the island that you want to be on. And so creating a shared vision is really about going from my world, the me world and the you world, to a kind of a we world. You can imagine two circles intersecting each other, where there's the you and the me and then the we. And that's the shared vision. And that's really what stopping the tiger turtle pattern, going from expectations to agreements. It's everything you agree on that's going to create an amazing relationship together.
Yeah, and look, we ask you the question, have you and your partner ever sat down to truly envisage your ideal future together? And it's amazing the number of couples who maybe did this 20 years ago, or no, they've always thought about it but never done it. So this is your moment if that's you. And for Grant and I, we just got back last month from spending a few days in Mahia, where this is exactly what we did. Walking along the beach, talking about it, and actually recreating this vision and just tweaking it a little bit more. And a shared vision isn't just an optional extra for lasting happy relationships. When we share our goals and work together towards this shared vision, most people feel much more committed to their relationship and are much more likely to achieve their personal goals also. And, vivid imagination is very powerful, because you may or may not know that the subconscious brain actually can't tell the difference between reality, what actually is, and a vividly imagined thought. And so this is what we use to help you to create your relationship vision.
So what that means is really standing in the future as the future now. So it's like, imagine, if I was walking you through this, I'd say, imagine that we're talking and it's 12 months from now, and close your eyes and you've kind of walked across the bridge from where you are now to where you want to be. Now imagine that future together where you're intimate and connected. Now I want you to visualize and feel and sense, everything that you can see, everything you can taste, everything you can touch, everything you can smell, with all of the senses. What are you doing together? What sort of things are you creating together? What does your house look like? What does your work look like? What does your life together look like? Your holidays, the times you have with the family, with the kids. For us, that's really, really vivid. Not just, oh yeah, we want to be close, we want to be intimate. No. What does that actually mean? How much time are you spending together in the morning, and in the afternoon, at night? What's the physical intimacy like? All of that sort of thing. The more vivid you can create it, the more it becomes real. And then it's not something you're working towards; it's something you're bringing into your realm right here, right now, and living from that place. From that sense. And then eventually, that becomes your reality.
Yeah, and you can either pause the video and see the questions there on the slide, or look at in the book, chapter 6, page 88, we walk you through that exact process that Grant's just, think you shared beautifully. And look, I've got up here a vision board, which is one way that you can really bring this vision to life as well. So this is something this is one that we created a few years back. We've got some pictures, photos actually mostly, and stuck them on a board with key words that stood out to us. And be sure to include a picture of yourself, because this helps to make it more real and personal. So this is just one way that you can really help to make that shared vision come alive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's probably worth highlighting what not to do, because what not to do is what your company does. If you work for a company and you get a leadership team, and everyone puts together a list of 100 words on a whiteboard, and then everyone votes on the words that they like, and then that becomes your shared vision. That it, your mission statement. We're the type of company that we value our people, and we want more excellence, and we want to be the leader in our field. It's just totally useless. Throw it away. We're not talking about that. We're talking about something that's tangible, something you can taste and touch and smell, and it should be your personal vision and Christine's personal vision, and then all of the elements in that are the same. And it doesn't. It's not a process of watering down and having something. It's got to be real and something that we both can feel that we really want.
Yeah, and in creating this particular vision, I spent a couple of hours just really in a space of creative um, visioning, and made up this, and then Grant came a look and said, "Oh, that's mine too." Hey,
Yeah.
because we've been together so many years now that we do this is part of our dialogue together, our conversation together. So we really are on the same page.
Mm.
And that wasn't always the case. So this in the book we walk you through how to do this really well together. So and Grant's also shared with you how not to do this. So with this shared vision, you're in a great position now to dive deeper and explore Principle 7, which is crossing the bridge. David Thoreau says, could a greater miracle take place than for us to look through each other's eyes for an instant? We never really can do that. I can never really look through Grant's eyes, even for an instant, but this is really at the heart of what we're wanting to do here, is to actually what we call cross the bridge to the other person's world, go from a me perspective to a we world. So I'm really wanting to cross the bridge, and at its essence, this is it's not about losing you as an individual. It's recognizing that we are actually interconnected as human beings, and it really aligns with that lovely African concept of Ubuntu. I am because we are.
Yeah, the real in the real world, it's often I would feel, and this was something that I'd created, that Chris really doesn't listen to me, and she probably felt the same way. So one of my requests was, we'd go for a walk up Tomato Peak, and I'd say to her, can we have one of those conversations where you listen to me, and it just means I'm going to say everything that I want to say about our future, or just something that's important to me, that's been sitting with me, and request that you just listen. So then Chris would cross the bridge into my world. So in other words, leaving her side of the bridge, which is filtering it through, this is what I think, or this is but, or how about, or this, her interpretation, and just really being over on my side of the bridge, and really, really listening deeply to everything I'm saying, and then maybe feedback, not necessarily parrot back everything I'm saying, but just sort of check in, that she's really, really heard me. And that's crossing the bridge. And then I feel, what, I've really been listened to.
Yeah, and we put this in this as a later chapter, Principle 7, because it is quite, when couples are really struggling together, this is a deep concept to actually really, really listen, and it's transformational. So, if you're up for it, give this a go for a walk, and just, when, I can be like the tiger. So for me, as Grant says, it's just zipping up my mouth and actually just listening to him while he speaks. And then sometimes it's paraphrasing. Did I get you? Did I check? Did I understand you?
So it's not a conversation that you'd have over dinner, or necessarily when you're cooking dinner, an everyday conversation. It's about the times when you really need to connect, or you want to feel a lot more intimate or connected, and because often that need for me to feel listened to. Like I don't even know what I think necessarily. It's just I want to talk about something, and as I start to talk, more comes up and more comes up. But often with couples, you know, people would misinterpret each other because they're not really hearing, you know, the full depth of what's wanting to be communicated.
Yes, we find this really, really important. You can see there's a quote on page 797 about how to cross the bridge. But really, this is a huge secret for building, that really
Yeah.
warm, intimate
Yeah,
relationship.
and we could write a whole book on this.
Yeah, it's very important.
It is so important.
And at the end of the chapter, we give you some actions. Now, these actions are actually quite transformational. They're so simple. They're actually quite practical. We're giving you some specific tools here, well, some actions to do. 10 to 15 minutes together daily to check in and actually talk to each other. Date night, a weekly date night. We've talked about that earlier. Business meeting to talk about business and admin and um, we usually recommend it weekly, and a conflict conversation time. So some really simple practical actions that you can take to start listening more, better, crossing the bridge, because as it says there, happy couples talk a lot.
Yeah. Now we've kind of been through these 5 principles, which is the most um, well, the principles we've gone through right now are the most important principles in getting kind of rapid transformation quickly in your relationship, and they're foundational. And then what I would find is, sometimes couples really get stuck on these old issues. Yeah, but you had that affair. Yeah, but why do you keep on bringing up that affair? That was in the past and I've changed since then. And you always throw it back at me whenever we have an argument, that you don't trust me. And so what is the principles that we need to understand and learn so that we can let go of the past, because the past is gone. It doesn't mean it still doesn't hurt or you can't acknowledge it, but that kind of brings us to letting go and forgiveness. And forgiveness really doesn't mean I forgive you because you were mean to me. It means I let go of holding on to the grudge that you did something that hurt me, or that I was hurt by. So it's not to sit in judgment of someone else. It's just to let go of something, some resentment, some bitterness, some thing that you're holding on to.
Yeah.
And then that sets you free to be the best version of you.
Yeah.
And letting go is all about letting go of the rope, the thing that you're holding on to. And that's the whole secret to happiness, actually. But that's a different, we could talk a lot about that.
Yeah. And as you said, we can't change the past. What we can do is we can learn from the past. And Rumi says it beautifully when Rumi says the wound is the place where the light enters you. So, we've had these hurts in the past, and we can let go of them, and they can actually become a gift as we work through them in our relationships. So this is really, this is quite a transformation, transformative power as you let go and you choose to create emotional freedom between you. This unresolved hurts are really like carrying the heavy stones on your backpack that weigh you down and stop you moving forward.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so it's the whole reason you want this is because, and Michael Singer talks about this a lot. What's the other book, Letting Go, by David Hawkins, talks about this a lot. All of Edith Eger, all of the spiritual masters talk about letting go and forgiveness. Why is it such a big thing? Because it's kind of like you've got this emotion just gets stored and gets bottled up, it gets suppressed, it gets repressed subconsciously. It even gets expressed by talking about it a lot, but really you're just creating more and more and more of this kind of unhappiness and these kind of negative emotions. So letting go is allowing the emotion to be processed, correctly, so you're not holding on and suppressing. And then, the key to experience more love and more happiness is just to let go of all of the emotional upsets, the triggers, the anxiety, the fear, the upsets. When you let go of them through letting go and forgiveness, then your natural, joy and happiness and well-being just bubble up. Just like our grandkids, right? They're just kind of naturally happy. It's not something you have to create. It's something that's already there. You've just got to let go of what's in the way of it.
Yeah, beautifully. I think you said it better than today than we even did
Yeah,
in the
it's
book.
kind of like this. The happiness is sitting there, but on top of that is all this kind of other stuff. And when you just release it, you just have
You've got the pure happiness and the joy.
pure happiness sitting there.
And that's what we want to create in this chapter here.
Yeah, and we'd literally, could spend a lot of work in our one-on-one work that I do with, senior leaders and business owners, professionals. They've spent a lot of time, working hard in order to be happy. I've got to do all this stuff and have all this stuff, and they've become really good at suppressing negative emotion and bottling it up, and then only to realize, maybe they have it all, but then they're still really, really unhappy. So letting go and forgiveness is we're really scratching the surface here and in the book, and it's some deep work that we can do. Just reach out if you're really wanting to experience a deeper level of joy and peace and happiness. Then we can take you through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can read the slide and read the book for more information on this. But for now, let's look at this lovely quote from Dr. David Hawkins. The energy of love is constantly present. It only awaits our willingness to choose it as our way of being. So as Grant said with the glass, when we let go, we're free to choose love as our way of being. So we're wanting to let go of all those negative emotions. And one of the things that that can be helpful is to start your a feelings journal. So to start journaling those emotions that are going on. So if this is new to you, then journaling is a leadership practice that has helped many of the people that we've worked with, because so often we're just accepting that this is the way things have always been. So how do you do that? You just make some time. We do this in the morning and the evening most days, to actually look at, who am I? What do I want today? What have I got? And what's my purpose for this day? So just asking ourselves some questions to kind of help us to be very present to what's going on. And then as you list your emotions and triggers and reflect on them, then you can start to think about what are the things that are important to you, that you value, and start to take action on those. And that will help you to move towards the things that you value. And that takes us right to the end of chapter 8. There's lots more in the book. As Grant said, we're just scratching the surface, and that takes us to principle number 9. So sex and intimacy. And
yeah, it's quite funny because I love this quote when I saw it from the philosopher Schopenhauer. He said people are like porcupines. They huddle together. They want to huddle together to keep warm, but they end up pricking each other. And sex and intimacy really comes back to everything that's positive in the relationship. We deem as being, sex and intimacy. It's all the positive things that happen, and that is the icing on the cake. When you have all the other foundations right, like people often say, well, yeah, but how do we become close again when I really don't trust him or her? And as we said before, well, trust is built by integrity, when you do what you say you'll do, which is built by going from expectations to agreements, and honoring your word, which is built by stopping the the negative stuff, and then coming back and making clear requests, and it all builds up the relationship bank account to the icing on top of the cake, which is greater sex and greater intimacy. And most couples that we say, well, it doesn't mean we have to be physically intimate like sex. It's just cuddling or being close, and that's how we really define it.
Yeah, for sure. And like right at the beginning of the book, we ask you to picture waking up every day, feeling really connected to the person snuggled next to you, and to imagine this relationship where you both light up each other's worlds. And in every chapter, we've shared these principles and practical strategies that, when applied effectively over time, will naturally result in this greater intimacy and connection, helping you to transform your relationship. So this chapter here is really, in the cake baking metaphor, it really is the icing on the cake. It's often the thing that people come to us wanting, and actually what we find time and time again, that they get a much more satisfying and intimate and sexually satisfying relationship by applying the other principles first. So really we want to, for example, being your best self creates more intimacy. It starts with being your best, most loving self that you created earlier in the book. So this is a great point to ask yourself, well, who do I need to be to create more intimacy in my life? Whether this is taking 100% responsibility, whether it's bringing your claws in if you're the tiger, to coming out of your shell, if you're the turtle, and making clear requests and agreements. Who do you need to be to actually create more intimacy in your life? And you'd be super honest with yourself and reflect with who you're being with your partner at this very moment. And at the end of chapter 9, we give you the top 5 behaviours of sexually satisfied couples. It's very surprising how simple they are, aren't they? Doesn't mean easy though. They're much more expanded in the book. But 5 behaviours: kind words, great communication, lots of physical affection, good friends, prioritizing romance. Very simple behaviours, and also really important. And so, in Love Without Limits, we do share many client stories. There's one story that we follow throughout the journey, and that's the story of Naomi and Joe. So look, we just want to spend a few minutes now sharing their story to show how all these principles work together so beautifully for them. When they first came to see us, they really were on the brink of divorce after an affair, and they'd lost trust completely, and another professional had actually advised that they needed to separate. So when Joe first came to see us, he was wanting to work through how to separate, because they share their 3 children together. 6 months later, they were more in love than ever before. It was amazing, like this. The whole transformation as they put into place these different these principles is just so satisfying. And this is why we do the work that we do. So if this is what you're wanting, then we highly recommend that you work through these different principles that we share throughout the book. Reach out to us for help if you need help, and choose one of these action steps if you're looking to build more sex and intimacy. Perhaps prioritize a 2-minute intimacy building ritual. We share some ideas in the book. Schedule 20-minute love connection conversation. Practice the art of intimate conversation skills. Explore the love connection questionnaire for nurturing sexual intimacy together. try the fun action ideas for nurturing intimacy, prioritize nurturing self-intimacy, and discuss the impact of culture, family, age on your relationship, and take action to nurture that intimacy. So those are your actions from chapter 9. That takes us now to, we've finished the principles, and now we have a bonus chapter, which actually helps you to create lasting positive change through working with the brain. So, in the book we say, look, imagine a well-worn path from a gate the herd of cows must pass through to get to a water trough. If the gate's locked and the hay's in another corner, then the cows have to create a new pathway from the hay to get to the water trough. And this is the metaphor for actually how the brain works.
Yeah, it's kind of like, imagine you open the car door with your right hand all the time, and then you shift it to opening it with your left hand. Well, after a while, it's going to seem really, really strange, but after a while, it just becomes habit. Or brushing your teeth with your left hand. Try doing that. It kind of seems really weird if you're a right-hander. But your brain forms a new path. So that's really what habits are about, is just strengthening your neural pathways. So instead of doing this all the time, you start to do that. And then we're hardwired as human beings for things to be automatic, so that you don't have to think about it, because your brain would just fry if you had to think about brushing your teeth, or kind of like when you drive somewhere, and you kind of, like, I'll be driving home, and then it's such a well-worn pathway that I don't even think about it anymore. I'm thinking about all these other things, and just automatically, you just drive to work, or because that's how the brain is hardwired to be. So it's not easy to change.
Yeah, and it can be done.
Yeah.
So how do we do it? 3 things: insight, repetition, consistency in time, and a supportive container. In a nutshell, those are the 3 things that we need for creating lasting change. So, do you want to say a little bit more about that? Have we said enough?
Well, it's. I mean, the really big thing is to be consistent and not to beat yourself up. Because couples will come to us, and they'll try some of these tools, and then they'll say, and I can say, it's not, something's going to go wrong. I can assure you. Someone says, we've had a really good week. It's been amazing. And I'll say, just watch out, because if it all goes pear-shaped, that's okay. It's just like a graph. You've got these ups and downs, but the trend is going up. So it's really just about awareness, being aware, and applying, and committing to applying the tools, and knowing that some old habits will creep in. That's okay. You can forgive yourself. You can be kind to yourself. You can stop and breathe, but then commit to doing it differently, how you want to do it. And then over time, you look back and go, you know what, I'm way different than what I was 20 years ago.
And we can certainly say that.
Doesn't mean I'm a better human being. It's just some of my behaviours are a lot, have a bit more integrity, and they just work better, right?
Yeah, and I mean, if you think of a long relationship like ours has been 44 years, it's like, well, we're much different now than we were when we were teenagers when we met. And, especially over the last 20 plus years, it's been very intentional, focusing on changing new habits and creating new ways of being. So, James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, says it takes more than 2 months to create new behavior. So be kind to yourself, so as you do this, as Grant says, it's not, we'll go pear-shaped, and know that you have now strategies to repair your relationship and come back to each other. The supportive container, you may be wondering, well, what's that? one of the things that certainly helped us in our relationship is having some great mentors. They definitely help you to get there more directly and faster, because we have blind spots, we can't see the things we're doing. So we definitely acknowledge the fabulous mentors that we've had to be our supportive container as we've journeyed along. And just
like if I had to go and climb Mount Everest tomorrow, I wouldn't do it on my own. I would.
Thank goodness.
And if my life depended on it, or my relationship depended on climbing Mount Everest to get to the top, I certainly wouldn't do it on my own. Because I would hire a Sherpa, right? Because someone who's been there, that knows the pathway, that knows the pitfalls, that's more likely to get me to the top of the mountain. I'd hire a mentor, and that's something that we've kind of always done. We've always looked to mentors, whether it's in business or in our profession. We've always hired the best mentor we could find, because it's just a way to get there a lot quicker. And the thing is, in New Zealand, we have this kind of Kiwi do-it-yourself type attitude where she'll be right and I'll be okay on my own. And most a lot of people say, well, I feel ashamed that I should have to get help for our relationship. But we're just not taught this stuff in our own families. We're not taught this stuff at school. You just don't learn this. So who are you going to learn it from? A mentor will help you, not someone just out of psychology school, or someone who's got all the theories but without any practical experience. That just doesn't work. And so a lot of therapy doesn't actually work. And I was one of those therapists that kind of was a little bit green and trying some of these tools, and then getting really frustrated because I just felt like a fraud, that I wasn't really helping people. But after 42 years,
44 together,
41
married.
Yeah, you kind of pick up what works and what doesn't, and then especially in working with couples now, we're going to get you there a lot quicker, and without making the same mistakes we made. So we're not trying to sell something. This is for couples that genuinely want help, and we can help you.
Yeah. So if you're committed to lasting positive change in your relationship, hopefully, as we've gone through the principles, you've had some insight as to, even if it's just one small thing that you can do differently. It's can be called that aha moment. That aha moment actually gives you the energy that you need. It releases some energy for change. So then, practicing that change, repetition, consistency over time, taking action with that, and having a supportive container is the very best recipe that we know to set you up for great results. And at the end of chapter 10, as with every chapter, there's reflection questions. Again, it's about actions. What is the action that you can take to create positive, lasting change in your relationship? After all, that's what our intention in writing this whole book is about, is actually about helping you to create the relationship of your dreams.
Maybe we could just talk before we go into our rapid transformation model as an overview. Maybe we could just talk a little bit about a story of a couple.
We did when you were gone.
Yeah. Oh, you've talked about that?
We talked about Naomi and Joe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you talked about how Joe first came to me, and yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So, but you can say a little bit more.
Sorry, I had someone knock at the door with a squash racket. Yes, kept on knocking and ringing my phone, so I had to rush off and grab it.
But you could add a little bit more, because you've always got another angle.
Well, I guess it doesn't have to be that specific example, but it's a really good example of somebody who, the relationship is over, and often, if I think about, someone else I'm working with at the moment, someone who's very successful in business, and yet the very traits that have got him to be successful mean that he's not so great at listening, he's not so great at understanding his partner. He's really not showing up as the best version of him, but then we'll kind of often slipped into this, yeah, but you don't understand me, poor me. And it was the same with Joe when he first came to me. It was kind of like, well, my relationship's over. I've been told that, by a therapist that who said to my wife that the relationship is over, and so, but I really want to learn how to be a better version of me, and to learn some of these principles and techniques. So for the sake of the kids, and 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 in doing that work himself, and that's where we say one person can make a difference. It doesn't. It's not two to tango. He started showing up as the best version of himself. This other business owner that I'm talking about is now um, showing up in his relationship where he's really listening. He's not reacting the same. He's being a more understanding, a better listener, and that's making all the difference.
Yeah, and just so you know, we always change client names to so you can feel super safe as well. We never would use the correct names or any identifying details. But especially thinking about Joe and Naomi, it was such a bonus for them. They never thought that this was possible, that they could actually be enjoy a way better relationship than they ever had, and they had been very much in love when they first met. So this is the bonus of applying the principles. You can really create your love without limits relationship, and just coming back to our model that we use, really it's a leadership model. Lead yourself, build that love and connection, and then really live the life of your dreams, and those work together with all the principles around the edge. um, this model is designed around the relational lens. We are, as human beings, we are relational. It's an innovative leadership approach, and it challenges, as Grant said, many of the traditional relationship approaches, and empowers you as individuals and couples to step up as a leader and choose love as your way forward and live into your desired future. That really is our mission, to support individuals and couples to really live their best lives. And the 9 principles are the best way that we know at this point in our lives to support you to do that. And every day working with new and different couples, we see this approach working.
Yeah. Well, with our leadership principles, and principles work like gravity, whether you agree with it or not. If I walk off the roof of my house, then gravity is going to work, and all of these principles are the same. Integrity is a principle that works. It either has integrity or it doesn't. It's either whole and complete or it's broken. 100% responsibility is a powerful principle. It applies in leadership. It applies in sports. It applies with all areas of your life.
You're the player.
We're always in relationship with everyone. We're in relationship with the garden outside. We're in relationship with each other. We're in relationship with life. So how are you showing up and building your relationship bank account? There's fight flight patterns when people get threatened. The threats occur not because of, often they're a real threat, like a real tiger. It's because of there's something you care about that means your emotions are really just an indicator of what you care about. Crossing the bridge from me to we, being the best version of me, nurturing intimacy, creating a shared vision of the future, emotional freedom through letting go. They're all solid principles that work, and you can apply this at work, in your leadership and with your teams, and you can certainly apply it in your relationship and in your family. And what we say is, when you save and strengthen and transform your relationship, then that is the way to create the business and the life and and that you really want.
Yeah, the ripples actually impact all areas of your life.
Yeah, so your
So
relationship is the context that you can do
that's
this in.
right, and these exact same principles, we use them in the business context as well when working with teams, as Grant mentioned. And each of these principles is another ingredient of the recipe for your awesome relationship cake. And that takes us pretty much to the end of this walkthrough. And, you know, really our mission is helping couples transform relationships so they can create a business and life they love. So if that's you, our mission is that through the power of this walkthrough and through the book, they work together to help you to create a relationship, a business and life that you love.
Yeah, so the whole reason for writing the book is so that we could get access to everything that we do, in one form, so everyone can have access to it, whether you're working with us or not. And and if you've got the time to go through the book and you can apply it, then that's wonderful. If you want more help, couples, we can work with a small number of couples where we're normally fully booked, and we have spaces coming available. And so the process that we work with is initially how we help is we jump on an initial consultation, and then we'll spend the time to really look at where you're at right now, your current situation, where the challenges, the frustrations are, and then we'll get an overview of where you want to be, and then kind of look at the specific roadblocks and challenges that are in the way, the things that are stopping you, and then we can kind of look at a game plan to get you there. And that plan can be a short number of, maybe it's only a small Mount Everest you've got to climb to get over the hill. But what we find is that often in therapy, it's kind of like pushing a boulder up a hill. You push it up a little bit of the way, and then it rolls back down. So we make sure that we're going to keep the momentum, keep the boulder moving all the way to the top of the hill. And sometimes we can do some short interventions. We have couples intensives where if you really need to move really fast and you haven't got a lot of time, we work with business owners and entrepreneurs in a private, exclusive, 2 to 3 day intensive, in New Zealand or anywhere in the world. That's kind of our premium offering, our signature offering. We also have a $1 million marriage program, which is videos and worksheets that we work through in a process to create, first of all, leading yourself, then creating more connection, and then creating more intimacy, the icing on the cake. So these are just different ways we can help, but it just starts with an initial consultation, and then we'll look at if and how we can help, and if we can, then we'll look at the best pathway to do that. Just send me an email, send Christine an email, and we'll arrange a time to meet and jump and have a chat.
Yeah, and look, we just want to thank you for investing your time in this video walkthrough. We really do honour your commitment to creating more love in your relationship and life. Now, this video walkthrough works in a very complementary way with the book. So throughout it, we've referenced different pages and different chapters and the principles. So, this is a process that we encourage you to continue to work through, whether you do, the whole purpose of writing the book was, in fact, to leverage our ability to impact couples. So some of you may get exactly what you need from this video walkthrough and the book. Others of you, as Grant has already shared, may want to reach out for a little bit more extra help. Whichever is you is great, and we, our greatest wish for you is that this serves you in creating your love without limits relationship. So
Yeah. So just, and as a really, really quick overview, you don't have to read the whole thing in one go. The most important thing is to look at the first part of the book is to create an agreement with your partner around stopping the conflict and using the stop tool. Understanding this tiger turtle dynamic is really useful. Are you the tiger or the turtle? And then taking responsibility that you're not going to be the tiger or the turtle in conflict. You're going to stop that, and then that's a game changer. So then you're only going to come forward and make requests to get agreements, and then you're both going to agree on that as a process, as a tool that you're going to use as a principle. And then when you've got that, you've then got the foundation to start to build your relationship bank account and creating more positives. And then, of course, you're going to have an amazing shared vision that you're creating together. And there's a few things in there, like integrity and all the other principles there. But the foundation of it, if you get the foundation right, like the first half of the book,
you're well on your way.
You're well on your way.
Yeah.
And then if you get stuck, or if you have any questions at all, then you don't understand, then just reach out.
Great. So with that, thank you for listening. Thank you for being amazing and being part of our video walkthrough. So from both of us to you, here's to your journey toward love without limits.
Yeah, take care. Bye for now.
Bye for now.